As a national species, it's often said that Canadians have something of a blind spot when it comes to their national identity. With noisy neighbours, the USA looming large, the theory goes that Canadians have very strong feelings about who they aren't, but are never quite sure about who they want to be. Every year, more than 35 million visitors come to Canada. That's more than the number of Canadians who actually live here. On this journey, I'll be turning my back on well-trodden destinations like Vancouver, the Rockies and Toronto, and heading to Canada's Atlantic coast. Starting in Newfoundland, I meet the former cod fisherman turned tourist entrepreneur. In Nova Scotia, I check out the diverse social scene and Canada's often forgotten pioneers, Black Nova Scotians. And on Prince Edward Island, I encounter the literary phenomenon that has excited tourists flying over in droves. Whoa! Newfoundland was once all about fishing. It's what seduced generations of settlers, from the original Indians to the Vikings to the European immigrants in the 16th and 17th centuries. They all fill their boots, or should I say boats, with plentiful supplies of cod. But then those supplies started dwindling, and eventually in 1992 a moratorium was placed on cod fishing in particular, and this already poor region found itself in deep, deep trouble. And then Newfoundland struck lucky by striking oil offshore. Half the boats out there now are servicing the oil rigs. And with that windfall, they invested in a very modern industry here. Yep, tourism. Barry. Rajan.
Oh,
how are you doing? Nice to meet you.
Fine, thank you.
So what are you doing? You're getting ready for the new season?
Getting ready for the big season, yeah.
Barry Rogers' family goes back generations in the fishing industry, but with a moratorium on cod trawling in 1992, Barry took the plunge, left the family trade, and now operates boat tours around the island.
I grew up on my father's fish collector, and we'd go around to all the smaller communities that were remote. They had no roads back in the day, and we'd go at a prescribed time to collect the daily catch and then bring it back to the mother plant.
Many people struggled, and 40,000 left to find work elsewhere, but Barry says the shift came fairly naturally to him.
Meeting folks from all over the world, that seemed to be intriguing, you know. And of course it's on the water, and what I realized very quickly was that people would actually pay me for something that I really enjoy doing.
And there are certainly some unique experiences to be had here.
Wow, nothing demonstrates how beautifully rugged the Newfoundland coastline is more than this little inlet here. And these guys turn up, uninvited, but very welcome.
The switch to tourism has been greatly helped by Newfoundland having to adapt to the needs of the cosmopolitan workforce in the oil industry. Newfoundland's offshore oil has rocketed the province into a new age of prosperity. And now they've discovered valuable mineral reserves too. The future looks very bright indeed. A far cry from the days when Newfies, as they were called, were the butt of jokes from the rest of the country.
There will be jokes, and there'll probably continue to be jokes, but you know what? We take them and, you know, we incorporate it, and that's who we are. And we'll make fun of ourselves, and others will, but we're still fun.
And look who's laughing now.
Absolutely.
And it's not just expats and oil workers turning up, but new waves of tourists too. Thanks in part to an aggressive marketing campaign from the local tourist board.
There's no theme parks here. The weather is unpredictable. We have more rural areas than urban areas. We have a big geographic sprawl, and we're the most far easterly place in North America.
The fresh, pollution-free climate is sold as an asset here, although it can get pretty bleak outside the summer months. Direct air links need to be improved. Fog is a bit of a problem, and cultural attractions are at the moment quite small scale. They do love their music here, though. It's claimed there are more music pubs per square kilometre than anywhere else in North America. Mind you, that doesn't quite vouch for the quality.
Fast Track is in town. They've got some tourism questions, and they want to hear from you. We'll throw open the phone lines after the news with Nancy.
A replacement ferry.
But I wanted to know what other locals felt. So the next morning, it's off to the breakfast show at CBC with host Anthony Germain.
Good morning, Brian.
Morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. Where are you calling from?
Mount Pearl.
Much of the news seems to be about the fishing industry shrinking and oil-related businesses expanding. But is tourism seen as unconditionally good in Newfoundland? Isn't part of the charm of this area that it's relatively undeveloped and quiet without all the commercial trappings?
Tourism itself has obviously, especially with the oil industry, had a significant impact. It's brought people across that wouldn't otherwise have come.
I think we really don't do a good enough job of promoting our history, our importance in world history, and our culture.
Be careful what you wish for, I guess. We're a bit leery about opening the floodgates and letting the hordes come in here.
So, from one boom town to another region on the up, with tourism, once again, very much part of the grand plan. This is Halifax, a good time but also edgy city with dark episodes in its past. It was originally founded by the English in 1749 to counter the French threat on nearby Cape Breton Island.
Nova Scotia has 8,000 kilometres of coastline, which is why shipping and ships have always been important to this area. In fact, a ship you may have heard of, the Titanic, sank not far from here, and 300 bodies were brought to these shores. But today and for the future, it's all about shipbuilding, because the central government has awarded this province a $25 billion contract to build new ships for the Navy, which means a lot of people who left this area coming back for work, and a lot of new outsiders coming here too.
What that contract does, it eliminates the boom and bust scenario that we've been so used to. This means that for the next 30 years, Nova Scotians can feel secure that they're going to have a place to work, that they're going to have a place to live, and that our economy is going to be strong.
Saturday morning is when Halifax goes to market.
Is this something that you've created?
Yeah, I've created all the recipes.
Really?
Yes.
They're all your own recipes?
Yes.
So chocolate that makes you feel good about yourself?
Yes, and it's a superfood. It's like chocolate vitamins.
It's the Holy Grail. This is Halifax Farmers Market, the oldest of its kind in the whole of North America. It's Saturday morning, and if a market can rock, then this place is rocking. And it's this kind of feature that really gives a city an individual identity.
Once upon a time, this was a deep-water harbour, notable for its scurvy-ridden pirates, whorehouses and press gangs. Then it became colonial, Puritan and rather conservative. And now it's a trendsetter with a sense of fun again. And controlled debauchery.
1, 2, 3.
Like Newfoundland and Labrador, this is a province now confident and keen enough to challenge the big boys of Vancouver, the Rockies and Toronto for tourism custom.
If you come to this part of the world, Atlantic Canada, you probably hear an awful lot about history. How the original inhabitants, the First Nation peoples, were overrun by the colonising English and French. How the Irish and Scots swept over in the 18th century. How the Brits deported the French Acadians down to Louisiana, where they formed a new community, the Cajuns. But there's one group of people you probably won't know too much about. Black Nova Scotians.
Gospel services like these have united black communities in Canada for centuries, not just for the religion, but as an important meeting point. The black presence in Canada goes back 400 years. Descendants of all three of the major migrations of people of African origin to Nova Scotia are here.
All I have to do is kick my hand in your hand.
Add to that the families of Caribbean miners who came to work in the mines in the 1900s, and you have a rich tapestry.
Heavenly Father, you look down upon me, dear Lord. You look down.
But only now is Nova Scotia really waking up to the value of this heritage, thanks in large part to some major players in the arts world.
I travel outside of Nova Scotia all the time, and I'm always asked that question, where are you from? And people say, you know, I say Nova Scotia. And then the next question, where are your parents from? Nova Scotia. Well, where are your grandparents from? No, your great-grandparents, Nova Scotia. And it's just, it's almost unreal to people that there could be a black lineage that stretches back in this, you know, I can trace my roots here back into the 1700s. And that, you know, for Canada, I think for some people is a bit hard to believe. That's the history of the line, complicated as it may.
Shante is a classically trained musician who has now converted to being an acclaimed spoken word artist.
Sometimes I go back and forth. I'll sing and speak, you know, mix it up. I think spoken word and language is very musical inherently and very rhythmic. So I think spoken word lends itself perfectly to music.
So how possible is it that black heritage in Canada could be recognised in the same way as it is now in the USA, and as such become a source of tourism? One visitor certainly thinks so.
Nova Scotia is interesting for me because of the strong African diasporan connection here. It's one of these places which it really cements the African diasporan participation in North America and Western history.
I never wrote about my history of the folks that mattered to me. Fraser, Simmons, Downey, Davis, and Kane. I mean, the Book of Negroes bears my family name. Definitely, you know, writing and performing can be very emotional. It's always emotional when I perform in a place that I consider home. And where this union of music and poetry is that which made the third, no greater love to me than this, the gift of spoken word.
As Atlantic Canada discovers more about its black heritage, after the break I find out how to cook Nova Scotian style. Whoa! How to get the best panoramic view of the countryside, and how an imaginary little girl is wooing visitors from all over the world into Canada's smallest province. Rich in minerals, oil and gas, the east coast of Canada is now staking a claim as a Premier League travel destination too. But this region is still perhaps best known for its fishing. Strict licences now restrict opportunities to harvest at will, but on this freezing cold morning in Pictou on the northern coast of Nova Scotia, there's a sense of anticipation in the air. Or rather, there was for a while.
I've woken up at 5 in the morning to come here to see the lobster fishermen lay out their traps for the first catch of the season, and nobody's here. What's going on?
But then a curious indigenous species known as the kilted chef approaches with some news.
I don't know. This morning we have some high winds predicted for this afternoon, so the Department of Fisheries and Agriculture decided to postpone the fisheries for 3 more days.
Does that mean no lobster?
No, that means there'll be lots of lobster, just a couple days a little later. That's all.
All right, let's go get some breakfast.
Sounds good.
Sparsely populated and rural, this is not somewhere I recommend for ardent clubbers.
Outside Halifax and away from the coastline, Nova Scotia is all about immersing yourself in the countryside. And one brilliant way of getting a marvellous overview of the wildlife is to get on one of these. But not if you've got a bad head for heights. Whoa! Whoa!
Apparently, a 2-year-old and an 87-year-old have both done this, which puts my own nervousness into perspective.
So, we're going to a fancy dress party, right?
That's what it looks like, doesn't
After all that activity, one's appetite is suitably whetted.
Hello. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Good morning, Margaret. How are you?
Good.
How come we're dressed up to the nines here in protective gear and you've got hardly anything on?
I've worked with them more than you have and they don't bother me.
Look at that.
It's full.
Okay, here's some honey.
Yep.
This has a little layer of beeswax, and underneath that you'll find liquid honey. So we take a tool that we take that little top layer of wax off, and then it goes in a machine and it gets spun out by centrifugal force. You see the honey underneath there?
Yep.
One of the dinner items that I'm planning this evening is what I call an ooby gooey haddock. And it's a fresh piece of Nova Scotia haddock that we're going to stuff with some of the lobsters and cream cheese, and we'll finish it with some of Margaret's honey butter.
And with a few invited guests, it's time to sample some Nova Scotian cuisine. Next day, the weather's cleared and the lobster fishermen are finally out setting their traps. They've been given the green light. But I am now on a very different voyage of discovery.
So it's farewell to Nova Scotia and hello to Prince Edward Island, known for being the birthplace of Canada as a nation. But to be perfectly honest, it's probably better known today for a little girl that doesn't exist.
Once I thought I'd like to be a blossom growing on a tree, white and pink and lazy as can be.
Today is a very beautiful day.
These people are here because of a series of books about Anne of Green Gables, written early last century.
We're all going to go out to Anne of Green Gables' house, and that is the house which is famous for the story by Lucy Maud Montgomery.
They describe the exploits of a high-spirited pigtailed orphan who arrives in the town of Cavendish on PEI to live with an elderly brother and sister.
Gee, I'm glad I'm no one else but me.
Today, that story has a global cult following.
Where are you from?
I'm from Brazil.
You have come here to see Anne of Green Gables?
Yes. Why? Because the history is very exciting.
Where are you from?
In Japan, yeah.
And this is your first time to see?
No, I have many.
This year, second time, and last year, maybe 5 or 6.
And why are you on this bus?
I'm a Japanese, and so maybe so Japan have to go to Green Gables.
This was considered to be a very rich home. The wallpaper, the curtains would have looked like in the 1890s.
Now, would you actually up sticks and move home to a little island halfway across the world just because a book about your favourite literary character was based there?
Yep, I do know people who have moved here. There's one lady who runs a tour company specific for Japanese people, and another lady who's opened a tea room, again to the Japanese clientele, close to Anne of Green Gables' house.
If you hadn't come for me, I was going to walk down the track to that big wild cherry tree. You see it?
Yes. Prince Edward Island hasn't been slow to capitalise on the Anne phenomenon. The Confederation Centre of the Arts in Charlottesville is home to Canada's longest-running musical, which is about, guess who? Right now, actors are being auditioned for the next cast to take over the production.
Mrs. Spencer said my tongue must be hung in the middle. It flaps so.
Great. Good. As far as tourism dollars are concerned, Anne of Green Gables is our cachet in. If we didn't have Anne, people wouldn't know about the island. So that's Anne is the invitation for people to come here, and she's invaluable to us.
So, listen a little bit more. Tracy, come on down here.
Personally, I don't completely get it, but clearly Anne is invaluable, not only to Prince Edward Islanders, but to people from all over the world.
So I want a big smile. Everybody say, Anne!
So, what are the prospects for Atlantic Canada? Well, when it comes to oil and shipbuilding, I'd say pretty good. And for tourism too, as long as they continue to nurture their contemporary culture, their infrastructure and their winter activities. Because ultimately, nature has dealt Atlantic Canada a good hand, in spite of the weather, with some of the most unassuming, down-to-earth, accommodating people you'll ever meet.